We are recording here. Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone. Oh, somebody's not muted. Okay. Anyway, welcome once again. My name is Mike Peterson, Mayor of City Cottonwood Heights. This is Tuesday, October 20th. It's our work session. It's just after 5 p.m. I want to begin with reading a determination that we're required to do because of not having an anchor location, and this meeting is online. So pursuant to Utah Code annotated 52-42074, the city's mayor, as the chair of the city council, hereby determines the conducting of the meeting of the city council on this date at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. It is well recognized that a global pandemic currently exists related to the COVID-19 coronavirus, which has potential to overwhelm Utah's healthcare systems. Therefore, due to the state of emergency caused by the global pandemic, I find that conducting a meeting at an anchor location under the current state of public health emergency constitutes a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the location. And again, therefore, we are all online, and thanks to Zoom. Let me also begin by thanking Councilor Bracken for conducting the meeting a couple weeks ago. I appreciate your help, Scott, on that. Allow me to get away for a minute. Now, referring back to your agenda, we'll review the business meeting. Hope everybody has that in front of you. And before we do that, of course, we'll have our CDA meeting in between. After citizen comments, we have staff report, which will be a finance report that Scott Jurgis will do. We have some action items. The first one is consideration of an ordinance regarding Bonneville Shoreline Trail Access Master Plan. Mike Johnson, you want to introduce that here real quickly and tell us anything unique about that? I think we've been through it a couple times.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I don't have any updates tonight. 3 or 4 weeks ago, I sent the latest revisions to the council. They've been posted on the website as well. So that is the draft that we're recommending for approval, and that has all of the changes that have been recommended by the council in that draft.
Okay, any questions, concerns? All right, the next item, which would be 5.2, which is amending a code concerning idling vehicles. I guess it talks about warnings or something like that. So who's going to talk about that? So Mike,
I can. Okay. I can. Yeah, it's two elements that we're changing based on state legislative changes. One includes the warning, so moving from three warnings to one. And then the other relates to businesses located on private property that have drive-throughs and having signage posted related to that. And that's all consistent with what state code was adopted in the legislative session this past year. So that's what we're recommending with those two changes.
Okay, good improvements. Thank you. Any questions of that action item? Hearing none. 5.3 is accepting a bid and approving a construction contract for 2020 citywide asphalt crack seal project. Matt, you want to introduce that?
Yeah, this is part of the road maintenance plan. The first part of that, crack sealing for the fall and in the winter, and we'll do the slurry seal and the chip seals in the spring.
Okay, and that contract's $227,000, you can see on your agenda. The next item, 5.4, is approving an interlocal agreement with Udot for corridor preservation and control along Wasatch Boulevard. So Mike, is that yours?
It is, yeah. You'll remember we talked about this I don't know, back in March or April, I believe. This is a cooperative agreement. It's been referred to as the corridor agreement with Udot. Anything in the EIS, like capacity of the roadway and speed and design and things like that, they're kind of part of a separate thing. So this is unrelated to that. This is an agreement that establishes that both Udot and the city are aware of what Udot's intersection spacing requirements are, particularly that Udot is aware that the city has transportation master plans, in this case, the Wasatch master plan that we want to achieve and we want Udot to help achieve. So that's referenced in the plan. It talks about potential locations for signals. It doesn't specify signal types or anything like that. It's just locations of signals based on Udot's standards. So it covers the gravel pit property and then the various potential signal locations along Wasatch Boulevard. And then it talks about access management. So if in the future any property is developed or constructed or modified in any way and needs an entry or an intersection, certain standards for how that intersection needs to be designed, and really trying to achieve less unique intersections on Wasatch Boulevard. So the fewer conflict points, the better. One of the big changes that was made since last time, it was a recommendation to add some language in to mitigate noise with any changes that are made. There's a provision in there for that now. So we feel pretty good about where it is. Again, it's just a cooperative agreement to make both parties aware of the other's needs and in rules and master plans on the corridor. So it establishes a better working partnership between Udot and the city when we're dealing with access management and intersection spacing and that kind of technical stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I read through it and I think it's exactly that. It's a great tool to formalize that ongoing working relationship. Also, I noticed at the end of it, it refers to the fact it will be reviewed at least every couple years to be updated.
Right.
But Mike, on item number 3, it refers to some traffic signals, and it refers to 2E above, but 2E above doesn't mention any traffic signals. Am I misunderstanding that?
Let me take a look there. 2E.
Well, if you go to item number 3, it says proposed traffic signals listed in 2E above will not be installed unless blah, blah, blah. But if you go up to 2E, it doesn't refer to any traffic signals.
Yeah, I think the intention, and I can clarify that, the intention is those 7 listed signals are the ones that are either existing or potential. So I can clarify what that means.
It refers to 2E, and that's a whole different area.
That's a good question. I don't know what 2E is, but there is the exhibit A at the end, and
yeah,
the way I understand is those are the signal locations, and I agree. I don't know what 2E is.
Yeah. Okay. I just reading through, I just saw that, but appreciate that interlocal agreement and UDOT's willingness to communicate and work with us as we move forward. So, any further questions from the council on that action item? Hearing none. 5.5 is consideration of resolution consenting to the appointment to the Planning Commission of Jessica Chappell, I think from District 2. So Tim, you want to introduce that? And
Yeah,
I can cover that quickly. And I think to clarify your last question, I think that should say 2F.
oh, okay.
2F is the section with all the signals listed. So that's basically saying any signal on that list that doesn't exist today will not be installed unless it's warranted and approved by UDOT.
Okay, that's just a typo then. Yeah.
Yeah, so it should be 2F. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, and Tim, jump in here. I'll just introduce this. We have a vacancy in District 2 on the Planning Commission. Our regular District 2 commissioner stepped down earlier this year. So we've been interviewing candidates to fill that position. Tim and I have interviewed a number of different candidates and are recommending Jessica Chappell. Her application and resume are attached. She's a structural engineer and has a background and expertise in structural engineering, but also sensitive lands, so fault lines and geologic hazards and that kind of thing. And we don't have that specific expertise on the commission, so we felt she would be a good fit.
Okay, and that's District 2, so that gives us good representation. Any questions on that appointment? Okay, thank you. All right, that will be the work session tonight. Now we go back to our, that's our business meeting session. Now going back to the work session, we have a couple staff reports. The first, I'm excited to hear about this because I know I talked a lot about today in UFA as well. So regarding CARES funding discussion, Tim and Scott.
Yeah, let me start. We want to bring this forward to you to give you an update on where we are at in our spending of the CARES Act funding. We have a little over $2 million that has been brought or given to us basically through this process through the county. We are appreciative of the county in partnering with all the cities and providing the funding for us. And so we've been working on a number of different projects, a lot of it, including purchase of equipment and things associated with the CARES Act. And so we're gonna have Scott go through that. We've done research on a number of other options that we can look at. One of the ones Councilmember Michael had indicated looking at using some of the funds for trails. And there has been some communities in the United States that have looked at that. We did have legal counsel review that and found that there's a location, actually Anchorage in Alaska has used some of the funds for that. And it's actually being questioned right now by the US Treasury. So we did some research on that and we have some concerns with pursuing that, especially where it's being audited now. But we've looked at a number of different other options. One that came up recently and we'll talk about is using some of the funds for substantially dedicated presumption of public safety services. And I'm going to have Scott address that and we'll go over some of the other uses of the funds. We have to have the funds spent by the end of December. Well, I'll let Scott address that because he has the dates, but December is when the funds have to be spent or they have to be turned back to the county. So Scott, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. The wrong one, but okay. So this, excuse me, this document shows our current spending through the end of September of our COVID costs. There are certain categories of allowed expenditures, if you will, that we can have expenditures, and we have to report our expenditures accordingly. And this is through September what we've been able to track. So personnel costs, the term that they use for personnel cost is substantially dedicated. And so if you're just, maybe out of a 40-hour work week, say taking 1 hour or 2 hours to dedicate towards COVID related activities and prevention and what have you, that's probably not going to qualify for substantially dedicated. There's been a lot of debate over what substantially dedicated means. And there's been several updates through Q&As that the federal government has put out in terms of guidance. The most recent guidance has been on September 21st, where they finally updated and gave us a little bit more robust understanding of what their interpretation of substantially dedicated will be. So I'll go into that a little bit more momentarily. But outside of that update, what we've currently submitted in terms of reimbursement is about $37,000 in substantially dedicated payroll costs. In budgeted personnel and services diverted, and this is predominantly due to somebody being on leave because of a COVID exposure or what have you, $5,739. And I also want to note, this also includes the Cottonwood Heights Parks and Recreation District, as well as some expenditures from Unified Fire Authority and some expenditures from Wasatch Waste and Recycling that have flowed through us that were associated with Cottonwood Heights City. So another item is telework improvements. So we've had some improvements to our teleworking that we've done through purchasing of Zoom licenses, updating Wi-Fi in different buildings, and obtaining some peripherals to help with telecommuting, teleworking, and other things, as well as a upgrade in a general sense to Public Works yard area where they had some substandard Wi-Fi at one time, and that's getting improved. So far, we've spent $24,000 in that area. Public health and safety management areas. What we've got is we've got disinfection costs. We've got personal protective equipment for workers and staff, $31,000, and then public safety measures that have been taken into account. And this is again between all four of those different organizations that I mentioned. And then we have a small amount of cost where we've sent some postcards around to help our businesses in our city know and understand what type of grants are available, and these grants are available through Salt Lake County, so those costs don't flow through us. So to the end of September, we had spent about $115,000. We expect to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of, I'll say, $200,000 to $250,000 by the time we kind of end on these type of related costs like I have outlined here. Some of the projects that are going on, just so you can know, is finishing up the Wi-Fi project at the Public Works Yard. There are a few other things going on inside of our building related to automating some doors that could open, and then some barriers, some more permanent barriers up in the front lobby area that will help to separate staff from the public up in that area to give a little bit of extra separation there. And then we expect a few more costs to come through to us from the Parks and Recreation District as well as they finish out for the year. However, the big thing that I now want to address, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here.
Scott, this is Mike Johnson. If I can just clarify very quickly, about 10,000 of that PPE expenditure has been masks and cleaning supplies for businesses. So that 31,000, about 10 of that has been supplies that have been donated to city businesses as well.
Okay, good update on that. So the Unified Fire has been keeping a close eye on the updates. Like I said, there was a new update that came out on the guidance of how you can spend these funds. And there was a new update that came out in September 21st that basically said that fire personnel, so this could be firefighters, it could be paramedics and others who are first responders, that their salaries could be defined as substantially dedicated. And if you meet the criteria to be substantially dedicated, then 100% of your hours, whether you work, 30 hours a week on it or whether you work 40 hours a week on it, but as long as you meet that criteria of being substantially dedicated, then all of that salary can be billed back using CARES funds. So what we have down here, if you look at this section here, in this area just right here, is we've got Cottonwood Heights City, the period of March 1st to June 30th, the portion of our bill this is our normal bill that we pay to UFA for that period. And then this is our normal bill from July 1st to December 31st, 2020. So it adds up to $2,117,000 for those two separate periods. These amounts here represent 65%.
Scott, just a second. Those two amounts together are 3.1 million.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. So this amount is the total bill that we get, and this 2.1 million is 65% of the total bill.
Okay.
And it's broken out down here. So
Okay.
65% of this is this amount down here, sorry. And then here, so it's $2.1 million. The total amount, yes, would be about $3.2 million that we were billed from fire. However, 65% of those bills, as outlined up here, are engine, trucks, and staffing. And the engine, trucks, and truck staffing are costs that would be eligible to be counted as substantially dedicated, therefore allowing CARES funds to be able to be used for those costs. Now, during the past year, we utilized general fund monies to pay for that. And we've paid both of these bills that amount to, just under $2 million here. But of that, just a little under $2.3 million in our current year, adding up to this $2,117,000 can be utilized for, we can use CARES funds to pay for those. So what that basically means is we have an opportunity to utilize CARES funds to in essence, save funds in our general fund to the tune of up to $2.1 million as we go forward. Now, as Tim had mentioned before, we have received about $2,015,000 of CARES funds from Salt Lake County. We expect to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $250,000 on things other than this, which means there's somewhere between around 1.8 million up to 2.1 million, depending on if we become eligible to receive any more money from Salt Lake County that could potentially be utilized. And let me back up just a second. We talked with Salt Lake County about this. We've talked with UFA officials about this, and we've talked with us, like our auditor, our external auditor, about this. And everybody is reasonably sure that these funds will qualify and we won't have any issues as we go and potentially receive, an auditor or review or what have you from the federal government on our use of CARES funds. There's always a slight risk because the guidance is not totally clear and set in stone when the feds give it out. However, this seems to be the best interpretation that seems to be supported by most individuals who are reviewing both the CARES fund and the uses of those funds, as well as what the trends are in, not in the state of Utah and across the country. Seems to be that everyone has the opinion that these funds can be utilized for this purpose, and we won't run into any issues where we're spending funds contrary to what the federal government would like us to do on this. So I bring that up because, again, it's not 100%, but we're probably in the, mid to upper 90 percentile in terms of comfort level of utilizing the CARES funds to cover these costs. If we were to do that, it would be, like I said, somewhere between about 1.8 million and 2.1 million, depending on if we can get any additional funds available to us as Salt Lake County's the actual grant recipient and we're a subrecipient. And so we're waiting to find all that out. But that's good news for us because that becomes a one-time stimulus to our general fund to the tune of between 1.8 million and 2.1 million dollars. And so that's a very good thing. I'll just throw out the one risk is if the federal government did come back and say, oh no, we don't agree with your interpretation of utilizing CARES funds for this purpose, then potentially we would need to repay these funds back to ultimately Salt Lake County, which would then have to pay them back to the federal government. But we all think that that is a very, very low probability to run into that issue.
Scott, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Have we been in contact with other cities that have this parameters that we would have? Have we been in touch with them to see what the discussion is with those cities to see if that they feel this is in compliance as well?
So I'll say yes. I've talked to our auditor who audits several other municipalities in and around Utah, and they believe that this follows the guidance as they interpret the guidance that's been given out. I know that Tim's had a few conversations with other city managers who have said that they're planning to go down this road, and this sheet is a recreation of a sheet that that UFA put out, and I added this one line right down here just so it was very clear how much for what period was for Salt Lake County. But this was provided to Holiday and to Alta and to the Unified Fire Service area so that they can all make plans to go and utilize CARES funds for this same purpose.
And
so-
in addition to that, and I think I've mentioned this in some of the communications that I sent to the council, we posed the question to the county and asked them to provide written clarification on this. They provided that to us as well as other communities. In the Friday, weekly Friday meetings, I brought this up in that meeting, and there were many other municipalities who were wondering the same thing. So that adds to the input that we've received from other cities.
Hey, has staff contemplated the possibility of bringing back the fourth firefighter?
So
Well,
this
Well,
can't
we have
go
to-
for future costs. It can just go for these costs that we've already incurred, which we won't probably be able to make a change on that due to the requirements of doing this. So this would be a one-time infusion of funds that going into the future, any increases in costs would have to be, we'd have to utilize ongoing revenues in order to be able to cover those items.
It might be a timely conversation, knowing that we've got the Canyon Center opening up and then the gravel pit shortly behind. I just think that population growth might warrant that fourth body.
Yeah, the timing of that, I think, would be our next budget cycle. I think that's a valid question, and I think we've always had that on our priority list. Let me add a little additional clarification to what Scott and Tim has referenced with respect to use of CARES Act. Actually, our city and Holiday are even more justified, if I can use that term, than other districts, because we pay UFA by way of a contract, which makes that availability to use CARES Act funding even more appropriate. If you're in other cities, you pay into a service district, and that service district is strictly taxed the citizens. So they've got to create a whole different mechanism to reimburse themselves, which is somewhat challenging. Also, some other cities are also looking at, and Scott, you can tell me if you've heard this, of possibly considering police as well. Have you heard anything with that?
So police is something that some cities are considering. However, it's a little bit harder to make the substantially dedicated argument there due to the fact that fire, any and all of fire at any given time, provides first aid to the public and so on and so forth. The police can do that probably a little bit less frequently than fire, does. And if we were to have, like, say if we had a hospital like IMC does, just our neighbor Murray does, and we had police, because Murray does this, they have police officers that sit at the entrances of the hospital there. Those individuals would very easily be able to be defined as substantially dedicated. However, it's a little bit harder to go into to other aspects. You might be able to make an argument that patrol might be able to be substantially dedicated, but that's a little bit more gray and from the people that I've talked to, which is predominantly our auditor that I've been talking to on that.
Yeah, well, this morning talking to other mayors, several other cities are pursuing that. And part of the rationale is that police probably, I don't know how many percent of the time, are at almost every call the fire goes to. And they're often there before fire. So we probably don't have enough CARES Act money to do anything with it anyway, but we may just want to keep that in the back of our minds if there's a way that it helps us going forward. Because another question would be to have that on the table if we get additional CARES Act funding. I know the county right now is saying we will not get additional because they're holding on to the remainder of the money, if I understand it. Tim, you correct me if I'm wrong, because they want to use that for the potential delivery of a vaccine, which is still undetermined how that'll proceed. But I think this is good news. And to Tally's question regarding the fourth firefighter, I mean, there's no question that we all support that. But also this saving, so to speak, is a windfall. It's a one-time, one amount. So it would not be ongoing. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Scott.
so Tim had mentioned going over the parameters of when we have to spend the money and things like that. So basically the CARES funds is good from the period of March 1st through December 30th of the current year in terms of the time frame that it needs to be spent for. In terms of us being a sub-grantee and Salt Lake City being the main grant receiver, we have to coordinate with them. So they have actually shortened that period a little bit with us. We basically have through the end of November to have our expenditures in place, because we have to reconcile and report what we've spent and then return any unspent funds to Salt Lake County by December 4th, which is a Friday at 5 p.m. so that they can incorporate that into their processes of analyzing what they're going to do prior to the grant ending at the end of December. And then I'm sure they have some process that they've got to do where they've got to return unspent funds back to the federal government at that point in time.
So Scott, does this require any type of budget adjustment on our part? Or this just comes in as revenue and?
Eventually, yes, it will require a budget adjustment. The reason why we've been waiting is we need to make the budget adjustment match our expenditures and what revenue we will keep. And so we haven't known how much we've been able, where we're going to be actually landing that. However, by being able to utilize the fire costs towards this, we believe we'll be able to utilize all the funds that we've been given and more if there happens to be more available, which it doesn't seem like there might be more available. But that's our intent at this point in time. But we wanted to update you specifically to this good issue of what to do with the unified fire costs that we can consider to be substantially dedicated, and it would be our intent to go down the line of utilizing the funds to cover these costs, which would be a one-time benefit to our general fund balance.
That's terrific. Any questions from the council regarding this direction? I think it's pretty obvious and kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I guess is the intent then, I guess, Tim and or Scott, to reserve approximately that 250,000 for other expenses we have within the city, and then do the balance like half last year and half this year, that kind of a thing?
That's correct. We would reserve that amount to cover our expenditures, and then look at the remaining portion to pay for those public safety funds that you're seeing there on the screen.
Yep.
Do you know what percentage of that 115 to 200 and some thousand is the service area or UFA?
So UFA was about 50,000, and I can't remember exactly. Let me stop my share. I can probably look at another screen and see this. So let's see, Unified Fire was about $50,000 that we paid to them. And then we had the Parks and Recreation, we had $13,000 that we paid to them. That's part of that 115. And then we just had another invoice that processed about a week ago, and I can't right now remember how much that was.
Okay, I just wanted kind of ballpark to know the impact. Yeah. Okay, that's terrific. Any further questions on that direction, Christine?
I just have a couple questions. questions. Maybe not necessarily on that particular point. It seems like a great opportunity. I was told that perhaps maybe another avenue we could pursue if open space isn't one, but would be trail maintenance. Do you know, Scott, if there's a way that we could get reimbursed for any of the trail maintenance we've done? Because I know we've spent quite a bit of money this year with some of what Matt's done in terms of pavement and at the intersection there. I'm told that I'm hearing that from Salt Lake County, that we should be seeing if that would work as well.
So my understanding of it is that you have to be able to tie it back to COVID in some way, shape, or form. So if it was like signage that says, keep your distance, what have you, things along those lines, or to maybe take a bottleneck area and make it wider so that you weren't having to have people brush right by each other as they were on a trail. Things along those lines, I think would be definitely acceptable. Beyond that, I'm not fully sure.
Can we then look at the purchase that will close at the end of the month, because that was adding open space for people to utilize?
So it actually, it strictly prohibits doing a capital purchase. And so those are areas where it's very clear on that. Yeah.
I think it would be worth our time to at least evaluate if any of the trail work that we did that would allow our citizens to get outside more during the pandemic would fit.
One of the things that I think is good, if by utilizing the funds to cover a cost that we've already incurred, such as UFA, those funds that come in, once we've utilized it for that purpose, and then it comes back and bolsters up the fund balance.
I understand that, but I would just hate for us to look for every stone. We need to uncover every stone.
Yeah, but
I'm going to say I want it for open space. Somebody's going to say, let's use it for public works building. Someone else is going to say stormwater, right? I mean, there are so many needs that our city has that we should be looking for everything that we can possibly find and trying to be as creative as we can with the limited time we have.
Well, I think the point is that we want to not return any of it back. So by putting it whatever direction, as you both articulated, it frees up the general fund that we can use for trails, for open space, or for capital. The point, which is good news today, is a few months ago we thought we were only going to be able to spend $200,000 or $300,000. We'd have to return the rest back. So this is a windfall. It goes to the general fund, and we have the discretion of where we want to spend it going forward, whatever it is. And yeah.
To Christine's point, though, Scott, I would just add, my daughter is about 90% confident that she caught COVID on a crowded trail. So for what it's worth.
Well, I think across the country, I think it's well documented that parks, trails, and all of our open space is overwhelmed with individuals who are augmenting their recreational pursuits because of the pandemic, and most of them are going outside, which we're encouraged to do. So there's no question it's a valid direction to even take part of this windfall, because it's one-time money, and use it for those types of things, because even ongoing, the new normal is going to be impacted as well. Maybe that's where Christine's going forward, is that we need to look at some of those types of expenditures going forward with respect to parks and open space because of the pandemic. Yeah. And we'll get more reports on this going forward. Hopefully, if there's more stimulus money comes down, we get more coming in the future. But right now, I checked with the county this morning, and again, I was told that because of the trying to figure out how to distribute the vaccine, they're going to be holding everything else and not do another distribution at this time. Tim, is that what you understand?
Yes.
Okay, any follow-up questions with Tim or Scott regarding CARES Act funding?
No, thanks for the good news, Scott. That's good news.
Great news. So just to clarify, everything needs to be in by November, what was it?
December
4th.
Yeah,
I
so
thought-
basically, we're gonna have to have it expended so that we can, because we have to actually record the expenditures, so we're gonna have to cut checks. Basically, we'll say by November 30th, so that we can reconcile and get everything turned back to the county by December 4th. I guess if there was a very last minute thing, we could squeeze it through, that last week, but logistically, we should, by utilizing the fire costs, we should be able to get everything spent by November 30th and have that flow through and report that back to the county, and in essence, not have to give the back funds to Salt Lake County.
So anything in our budget that we save from using the CARES Act would be to our benefit, and we wouldn't have that timeline. That's just what I'm making sure of.
Yeah, every year we underspend by several $100,000. It just adds to that underspend. It goes back to our fund balance, which we can use for reallocation. Yeah.
Right.
I know we're kind of running out of time because we have another big agenda item. Any final comments? Scott, excellent work. Tim, thank you. Good news, much better news than I would have thought we would be hearing at this time during the pandemic, because we looked at the budget several months ago. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item. That is the compensation study, with a reminder that we need to adjourn from this meeting about 6:30 for our CDA meeting. So keep that in mind as we go through this next agenda item. So Tim, we'll turn over to you, or Scott, who's going to lead out?
Yeah, I'll start off. This is something that we have been working on for a number of months. As you're aware, the City Council in last year's budget approved to have an intern assist with this compensation study and do the market evaluation, which we've done. We've spent hundreds of hours on this project. Appreciate Marina Khan, who is our intern that assisted with this. And then Scott and Paula spent a lot of time, as well as department heads. And so we're going to go through the methodology, but I want to just reiterate that this is an important aspect of focusing on our employees and what they do for us. Today, Mayor Wilson talked about one of her main focal points at the county is the employees, and keep them as the top asset of the county. I feel the same way as far as our employees. They are such a critical and important asset for our community and what they do. And compensation is a big part of looking at what needs to be done to help improve morale and a variety of different things. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go through the methodology process. But one of the things that we presented to the compensation study last week, we presented the study and then said that we would have information on budget projections. We're going to start with the budget projections, the 5-year plan. We've updated that. Scott's going to go through that, and then we'll go through the specifics of the compensation study and what we're recommending and proposing. So go ahead, Scott, and share your screen on the budget, if that's okay, Mayor.
Absolutely. If you can find it.
You're on mute, Scott.
Sorry, I'm looking for my file. I thought I had it opened up and it looks like I don't, so. Okay. Sorry, that took just a moment. Now I can share where I'm at. I thought that I had this open earlier and it looks like I did not. All right, so what you're seeing here before you is the 5-year plan. And I'm gonna, okay. All right. So what I've done on this, and this should be included in your packets, I believe, is I have included the first of the sheet has 3 years of actuals, so you can kind of see the trends from the past. Then it includes our May 19th projection of where we were going to end our fiscal year that ended in June of 2020. And then the actual, well, it's not quite actual, but it's close to actual of where we're going to end our fund balance here. And this does not include our CARES money that will be going towards UFA costs. So keep that in mind. So this will be impacted by that going forward. But we ended our year at about $4.8 million instead of $3.8 million of ending fund balance. Now this fund balance is our full fund balance. The amount that's available for appropriation is in this last column. That takes out our 6% that we need to keep for minimum fund balance and the amount that we need to have for our PTO vesting. Our original budget for the year had reduced revenues included in it of $5,750,000 of sales tax. The actual sales tax that we received in our year that just ended in June of 2020 was $6,720,000. And so based on everything that we're seeing, having in many cases record months in terms of collections of sales taxes, it's our opinion that raising our sales tax projection from $5,750,000 to $6,750,000 makes sense. So that's where this revenue item here changes from what we have in our adopted budget. It's adding $1 million of revenue to our sales tax projection. And we believe that to be a pretty conservative estimate, even so, based on the fact that last year we saw about a 6% growth in sales taxes. And so far we're seeing other entities like Salt Lake County, who's currently going through a budget process because their budgets are calendar year in nature. They're projecting, anywhere between 2 and 3% increases in sales taxes. There's several different categories of sales taxes, but in the general sales taxes, they're projecting a 2 to 3% increase for the calendar year. So if we went to 6,750,000, that would be about 30,000 greater than what we received in our past fiscal year that we're just in the process of closing. This also includes 405,000 in expense that's directly related to the compensation for a partial implementation of compensation, and we'll go over that in a little bit better later. But if we go through this budget would have a budgeted use of $713,000 of fund balance use. However, we typically, as you can see up above here, we always have either under expend or we have additional revenues that come in, a combination of both. Our lowest year of all was $651,000. I think we'll still see that, and it's predominantly in under expend on the expense side. And if you look at that on a percentage basis, we're talking about just over 3%. So that's like spending 97 cents out of your dollar that you have to spend. So we think that's a reasonable expectation as well, so that you would actually end the year utilizing about $113,000 of fund balance. So moving forward, that would mean that you would end the year.
Hey, Scott, I need to make
Yes?
clarification. Again, there's a major assumption in there that you kind of went over real quickly. That's with the assumption of adding $400,000 for compensation?
Yes.
Which has not been determined yet.
True.
Right, okay.
Yep. And same thing with the $1 million of additional sales tax revenue. That has not been determined yet by council either. So these are items that I have added in for a projection.
Okay.
If I may,
Sorry, Scott, go on.
I did not see, this is not in the packet that I received. So Tim or Paula or Scott, if you could email it to us. I really like these charts. They're very informative.
Yeah, we
I
will.
would like a copy.
It was not included in the packet, Scott. So yeah.
Oh,
that's
okay.
correct.
Sorry.
I
Sorry, I wasn't aware of that.
All right, Christine had a question.
Yeah, you have the 400,000, but where do you include the merit? Is that included in there? Because it looks like on my
Yes.
packet, it says 609,000 for market and merit.
Yeah, this is a partial year implementation, and we'll go into more details on that when we get into the specific part of the compensation. This right now is so.
Is just for the partial year for market and merit.
Yes.
And then in 2022, you included the full market and merit plus another inflation.
Yes. Yep. And so there's a whole bunch of descriptives down here that kind of go into what assumptions are in any given year and so on and so forth. So all that will be included in everything that you see here shortly when this goes out to you. And I'll shoot this over to Paula so she can make sure to get that out to each one of you shortly here. So moving forward.
Scott, I'm sorry. But again, when you shoot this to us, is it premature then to include CARES Act in it?
It does not yet include CARES Act funds in it. So the actual, by the end of the current year that we're in, which is this blue area where we're projecting 4,688,000, that would be about $1.8 million higher than this by including basically $1.8 million of funds on items that we've already utilized general fund monies for. Part of it will be reflected in the year here, about, I think it was 800 and some thousand, and then the remaining amount will be here that it will be reflected. So, but that would have a net impact of about $1.8 million.
I don't mean to hold you up, and I'll let you go forward, but it would be really nice to see additional lateral columns showing with and without the benefits and compensation, and also with and without CARES Act included in those things, so we'd see the whole potential picture. But we can talk more about that later. Yeah.
Yep. So moving forward, just remember that there would be a one-time increase that would be carried forward of about $1.8 million in that number that I've highlighted right there. So moving forward, 4,688,000 pulls down into 21, 22. Then revenues go up, and I'll move down here. So we've anticipated about 310,000 of additional revenues. Some of that is 50,000 in new growth for property tax. That's when somebody does an addition to their house, or we have new properties built, commercial, what have you. About a 3.4% increase in sales tax revenue, which was about $230,000. And then there's a variety of changes in Class C roads, franchise tax and fees and so on and so forth, that amounts to about 30,000 that we're projecting. And then on the expenditures, this kind of goes to what you were talking about before, Councilman Michael, that where we need to then take the remaining amount. So our total anticipated compensation costs are 608,000. If we put 405,000 in our 2020 to 2021 budget, then we need to capture that remaining amount that we haven't already put in there, plus project what increases will be in the next year in terms of implementation in that year. We need to add in elections of 60,000, another increase for a placeholder for fire. We need to add back some funding for Butlerville days. And then we have put in a placeholder of $100,000 in each year just to capture increases that we're not specifically aware of, but may come up as we go through the budget process. And then here is one other item is our debt service schedules adjust year over year. And this specifically reflects our most current police vehicle lease that we've just entered into, where it saves us about $101,000 when we start to pay for this over what we're paying for in our current year's budget. So by the time we implement all that, our fund balance goes from $4,688,000 to a budgeted ending fund balance of $3,348,000. But when we factor in, again, about a 3%, a little more than a 3% under expend, our actual ending fund balance is projected to be just under $4 million. And again, that would be augmented by about $1.8 million of the one-time money that would flow through from CARES if we did not spend that at this point in time. We have similar amounts that would come in each year thereafter. We have revenues that change each year in the $300,000 to $350,000 range. We have expenditures that come in, and again, it's about $450,000 compensation. Election seesaws in there every other year. We have a fire 4% placeholder that we put in there, and then we have $100,000 expenditure of unidentified items that comes in. And so as that seesaws through here, you can see that our projected fund balance does go down each and every year. 4.6 million to 3.9 million to, just under 3 million here as we go down through. And that's typical because we're typically take a conservative approach where we project our revenues at a more conservative pace than we project our expenditures, just to make sure that we don't get in a situation where we're over predicting our revenues, because I'd rather show you this going bad a year or two prior to it's going to go bad than a year or two later than it's going to go bad. And so you can see that, yes.
One thing I think we have to remind everyone, even though you have a healthy fund balance, when you're taking from the fund balance, that, in my opinion, shows an amount that eventually will have to be covered by a tax increase. So just because you have a healthy amount in your fund balance, when you're borrowing or taking from that 1.3, 1.6, or 2, eventually that's going to have to be covered by revenues somewhere. You can't sustain that without a tax increase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's either covered by future revenues or future reductions in service.
Right. So we have to, unless they're one-time type things, then that's a little different. But yeah, so that's something we have to keep in mind looking forward, is in 2022, 23, whatever it is, what it does to the tax rate.
Yep. And then I just wanted to outline the very last area down here, these not included options. Things that we've discussed at various times is, for every 1% property tax increase, you net about 80,000 in new revenue. So 2% would be 160, 3% would be 240,000, et cetera. For stormwater expenses, we anticipate between 1 to 4 million needed in year one, and then about 1 million thereafter. And that's part of the stormwater fee discussion that we've been having. And this option, the reason why this is notated here is this could save the general fund up to 600,000 annually, or cost an additional 200,000 annually, depending on which option is adopted on that. Or if not implemented at all, then it could cost the general fund up to $1 million annually, as there are stormwater needs out there. For telecom fee, this is the one franchise type tax that we have not implemented, and we believe that would bring in approximately 350,000 annually that could be utilized at any point in time that was implemented. Of course, this was noted earlier, there is a discussion about Public Works building, that's around $5 million, would probably go to some type of a bond or, you know, some other financing mechanism. And then, like noted here, the COVID benefit could be between 1.8 million and 2.1 million. That would be a one-time benefit. This is the part of the COVID benefit that's directly related to fire salaries that like we just discussed.
Okay, Scott, do you want to, we'll send that to you, but if you, I'm going to share my screen and include my memo, and we're going to go through this fairly quickly and answer questions and show you additional information.
As you do that, I just want to offer praise for Scott once again. I think that's excellent information. It's the type of view we as a council need as we make these tough decisions on major expenditures. So thank you, Scott. Excellent work.
Well, yeah, easily one of the best ways I've seen to present some very complex information. So very well put together.
Okay, so in the memo, and I'll just highlight some things that are.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yes. Let me see. Is that better? It's pretty big on my screen. Is it not big on your screen?
That's good now. Yeah.
It just shrinks down sometimes in the Zoom window. It makes it easier to read if it's.
Okay. Anyway, as part of this study, we gathered sources. As I mentioned, Marina Khan assisted with this. We used information from TechNet, compensation survey data from other communities. We compared job descriptions from 16 other cities with the majority of them being in the Salt Lake Valley. Included some outlier areas, Lehigh and Bountiful, which are close to our market. And then jurisdictions were selected based on the market area near Cottonwood Heights. We did the data analysis, including compared job descriptions and actual job duties in the process. And then those job descriptions were matched, and the data points used for comparison were the minimum, maximum, and actual average salary ranges. We'll show you some of that in just a minute. After it was completed, we met with department heads and fine-tuned it. And here's some of the highlights of the study. Salary structures. So currently we have 34 steps right now in our salary structure. We wanted to simplify that. And so we simplified it and narrowed it down to 12 steps with 3% separating each of the grades for non-sworn staff and 1% separating range for sworn grades. We included some of that information in your packet. We'll show it to you in just a minute. And then in addition to that, we assigned each position to grades that closely matches the average market data for the position and matched accordingly. Also tried to match the ranges and distributions, and grades were assigned to consider both the beginning, ending, and ending market range using the average as the target position. And then we assigned assignment of steps, placed employees into the range as the closest step that does not create a reduction in actual pay to facilitate separation between supervisors and employees. So we didn't, as we assigned them, they didn't get a reduction in pay, and that was across the board throughout. So the summary of the results, in fact, first, before we go into that, you want to just show them, Scott? I'll stop sharing for just a minute and we can show them those two screens, and we'll do it briefly because of our time. Scott, you're on mute. Go ahead. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. So this is the salary table. So between each grade, and I've hidden some of the grades because we're not utilizing every grade, but between, like, say, grade 14 and a grade 15, there would be a 3% change. So between $16.17 and $16.66, there's a 3% change in that area. And that between the beginning to the ending, it closely matches what our existing range in our grades are, and closely matched also the ranges that we were seeing in most of the feedback that we received for most positions. As we progress through, there's a 5% increase in these early steps, that followed by a middle range of 3.75% increase, and followed by a final range of 2.5% increase between these steps. The average across all steps is 3.62%, and that closely matches our current structure that we have with our current structure. The reason for this early increase is because we typically lose employees in the first several years of employment with our city. And that's due to the fact that they'll get enticed by, say they're making $13.15 an hour, and somebody offers them $13.50 an hour. They're like, well, hey, that's a 35-cent an hour raise. I'm going to go over there because it's more money. So when if we put something like this in place at their next anniversary, usually in July 1st, if we can say, hey, we're expecting to go up to 1381, then that employee might go, oh, hey, 1350 versus 1381, that's better if I can stick around and be here for a little while. So that's kind of some background to how these tables work. And as we're going through, we find a grade that closely matches what the market data says it should be. If it was, $16.50 on the low side, up to $24.50 on the high side, well, we'd probably pick a grade 15 and say that's what most closely resembles the market for that particular job. Anything else on that, Tim, you wanted me to go over?
Yeah, no, go ahead and I'll go back to my screen. Then on the, hope you can all see that. So the following, or this outlines the salary structures. We just talked about that, the salary structure review, and then grade assignment. Scott just mentioned that, and then assignment of steps. Summarizing all of this information, and then we'll show you specifics related to certain jobs. The average merit increase percentage, the increase for all employees eligible is approximately 3.67%. The percentage drops to 2.81 if you include all employees in the city. There were 2 employees that were outside of the proposed market range, so we froze their salaries with no increases until alignment occurs over time with cost of living. Step summaries, less than 27% of employees fall within those first 3 steps. As we talk about the first 3 steps that with the 5%, which would warrant the 5% merit increase, and then approximately 12% of employees are being paid at a point where they would not receive a merit increase at the end of that range. The average market change, the study determined that we're below market average. The total average market change for the city was determined to be 4.07%. The impact on pay ranges of the market adjustment were approximately, some were way out of range, 34% down to 0%. The actual pay is somewhere between 10.8% for individual jobs to 0%. And the overall market amount was originally projected at a total of 400,000. The actual market adjustments is about 16,000 less at 384. And then market and merit adjustments, original projections were 825,000. The actual total is less by about 200,000, which is a total cost of 609,000, which includes the cost of living, merit, and market, all 3 of those in that. So that's the basic summary of that. Scott, if you'll share the screen and we can show them exactly how it works in the study. And let me stop sharing here so you can do that. Okay.
And the 609 is an annualized cost, full 12 months.
Yes, that's correct. Which the 400 plus, you saw that half year roughly, or portion of the year in that last budget projection.
So Tim, just to clarify, when I'm looking at your, I don't know what you call them, appendices or your attachments on sworn, non-sworn employees, and you show the salaries underneath the price per hour, is that inclusive of benefits, or that's exclusive of health insurance and any of the other benefits we pay?
Yeah, that's exclusive of that. That does not include those benefits in there. What Scott's going to show you right here, though, he has a column that does show what the cost would be with the benefits.
But the 600,000 annualized or the 400,000 partial year, those amounts do include benefits.
Correct. That's
Yes.
correct. Correct.
So we just selected a handful of jobs that are kind of representative as we go through this. So I'll go through this and it'll probably make some good sense to you as we go through. So we have a position, communications manager. We have one employee in that position. The current range of that job in our system is $22.82 to $33.98. The current actual pay, it says average pay rate because if there's more than one person, this would be an average, but the actual rate for this person is that. The market study range showed that the actual range should be between $24.27 and $36.23 on the low and high side. We selected a grade 28 because that most closely matched the range at 24.45 through 36.19 for that particular job. The change to the actual range is between 7.1% on the low end to 6.5% on the high end. As we slotted that employee in on the closest step that we recommended, that for this individual it was an 84-cent an hour raise that amounted to 3%. The annual wage impact is $1,740 annually, and the average cost with benefits is $2,255. Moving back to this next one, for an IT Tech 2, we have one employee. Current range is $24.32 to $36.24. Current rate of pay is $30.72. The market study showed a range recommendation of $23.55 to $34.85. This is actually slightly less than the range that we currently have. So our recommendation, the closest we could come, was a grade 27, at $23.74 on the low side and $35.17 on the high side. This is between a 2.5% and a 3% actual reduction in the range. But as Tim outlined before, we did not intend to decrease anyone's salary. Putting this person in the next available step on that 27 would be $1.13 an hour change, or 3.7%. Salary change would be $23.61, and the total cost to the organization would be $3,046. The culture manager, we have again one position. Current range is $20.09 to $29.86. Current actual rate of pay $23.83. The market study came back with a range of $22.89 to $33.34. The closest rate of or grade that we could select on our scale that would match to that is grade 25, with a range of $22.38 to $33.15. That's about an 11% change on the bottom and top end of the range. The recommended actual rate of pay change would be 85 cents an hour, which brings them to 3.6% total change. The annual wage impact is $1,777. The actual cost, $23.25. GIS specialist, we have one. Current grade is $20.09 to $29.86. Current rate of pay is $20.84. Market study came back with $22.38 to $33.91 for the recommended range. And these are those, and when I say market study, it's the average beginning range and the average ending range. The grade that we selected was a grade 26. That has a range of 2305 to 3412. That's about a 14 to 14.5% change on those rates, or on those ranges. The actual rate of pay on this one is recommended to be a $2.21 an hour change, or 10.6%. This is one of the higher ones in terms of actual pay change from a percentage. And $4,602 actual wage, and then $5,902 for the total cost to the organization.
Scott and Tim, I'm not sure if we want to go through all these. We only have 15 minutes left. Do you want to allow for some discussion, or you want to, how much more in the presentation?
Pretty much these other 4 positions are what I have left.
Okay.
Yeah, so Scott, I don't think we need to go through each of those. We've included the officers, the number of officers, and you can see the ranges in there as well as the total cost. I don't think we need to go through all of these because I just have a couple of other things I wanted to highlight, and then I'd love to open it up. I have questions.
No, I appreciate sharing you the process and looking at this, and if we have this information, we can look at it. And I think I can see clearly how it's through the presentation. I just want to give some time for questions and other comments.
Yeah, Mayor, the only thing I was just going to add is I put some conclusion items on there. The Utah Employers Council study, the importance of the competitiveness in the market and comparing the budget information. I want to, and I'm recommending this in my memo, that we move forward with this. What it would mean is not a decision tonight. It would be direction to bring forth a budget amendment. This would have to be included in a budget amendment. We would like to get that prepared and love to bring that forward to you in November. That's the direction that we need. We're happy to be as transparent as possible. If I need to sit down with any of you individually and go through even more specifics, we can do that, showing what the information is, but that's kind of what my recommendation is. We need direction to bring forward a budget amendment, which would ultimately be your decision to move forward with this or not.
Well, I have 7 or 8 questions, but I'll hold mine and open it up to the rest of the council.
An effective date was going to be January 1st. From the way your numbers are laying out, I expect that that's not accurate. You're looking at an earlier date to implement those changes if we decide to move forward with them?
Yeah, we included a November date. That's what our recommendation is. It's the council's decision on that, though.
How does that work if we still need to do an amendment? We could still do it in November and then have to do the amendment after?
No, we would bring forward an amendment to you in November, and then implementation would be at the next pay period. If you make a decision to approve the amendment.
Other questions from the council?
It's probably not all or nothing, right?
What do you mean, all or nothing?
I mean, if we wanted to move forward quickly in November, we've got, I don't know, a couple handful of officers that are being reviewed by the Attorney General's office. We could pause those until after the review is conducted.
Well,
I don't see why you would do that.
This is a compensation study for the whole city. Those types of issues are administrative personnel, disciplinary issues if there's things that have to occur. This study is for the whole city. It's to bring fair compensation to all positions, and that's what we're recommending.
Yeah, I agree. This has nothing to do with individuals. This is strictly about job descriptions and appropriate pay for whatever job description the city deems as necessary to fulfill its mandate. I know in our last budget cycle, we took a position that we would hold on COLAs, we would freeze hiring. We've relaxed on that. We would hold on merits, and that we'd look at data this fall, and we would shoot for something that Scott just referred to for January 1st. Now, again, I think we always left the door open that the council felt they want to do it sooner, but what we said back during the budget process, that we would shoot for January 1st. I'm going to throw out a couple questions, and then maybe this will stimulate some further discussion. First of all, in that last budget process, we allocated funds for an intern so that we didn't get a leapfrog effort from a compensation study by the wrong individuals, so that we had direct involvement in doing that study. I personally support the study. I think our employees are our most valuable asset. As we just talked about, these studies should not refer to any individuals. If there's a problem with an individual, then that's administrative function. So to me, I'm supportive of the study. I think it was well done. Again, I think our employees need to be compensated fairly compared to the study, and that's what we propose for January 1st. A couple other impacts on this decision, and Riley Pilgrim may have some sensitivity to this. I know that UFA, who took the same position as an organization as we did as a city and most other cities, was with the uncertainty of the pandemic, that they would look at numbers and try to adapt and be prepared for something by January 1st. My understanding from this morning, that's what they're doing for fires. They're looking for January 1st. So I have some sensitivity of getting kind of a double standard a little bit and a possible inequity of timing, but that's not a deal breaker. I still have a couple of questions on CARES Act funding. It sounds like it's positive, but it's not absolute. So, but on the salary schedule and merits, I have a little bit of a question, but I can accept, but I'd like the council's feedback on this. By front loading steps, so the first so many years you get a 5%, then other years you get less than percent. I think an employee who's a new employee doesn't work any harder than an employee who's got 10 years. And so why one would be compensated more by merit than someone else, I have a little bit of a problem with. I know I understand retention, but I think there's other ways to consider retention. But again, if the overall council and recommendation is to go with that system, I can live with it. I've checked with some HR people, and I understand that is used by many organizations, but also other organizations who have consistent, every step is the same percentage. I'd like further discussion on how we use the CARES Act funding if we actually have a lump sum left over, and how does that impact future budgets, which impacts our ability to meet salary and compensation packages. I'd like to kind of have an opportunity to talk about this, not that one should outweigh the other one, but how does the stormwater fee impact our decision in doing this? Can we mitigate any of our stormwater fee issues with this better than projected budget? Probably not. We probably want to do both anyway, but we haven't had the discussion. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud. And my last question, and you know, Scott did such an excellent job in doing forecasting with respect to the fund balance. I would love to see a couple more lines in there that show the impact of that fund balance, you know, with the stormwater fee, which we've kind of done, with the CARES Act, with the benefits and compensation. I think I've seen enough of it that if somebody feels strongly about moving, I stick them up. But it seems like there's still a lot of questions we just need to kind of walk through and get some feedback on. But that's kind of my notes.
I had a couple more things, Mayor, but I see we're running out of time.
Go ahead.
I really love the math and the algorithm and how tidy the flow chart is. So employees can really get an idea of, I'm here, in 3 years, I'll be here. I think a phenomenal job on creating this. And my questions would be, do we have any other cities that have let out with that front loading? I think it's a great strategy. I just wonder if there's precedent. And then you mentioned 2 salaries were frozen. Who would those be?
Well, let's not talk about individuals. I don't think that's appropriate in this meeting.
Yeah, not individuals, just job categories.
One job categories, one is in public works, one is in police. Those are the job categories. On your first question, yes, there have been other communities, as the mayor alluded to. It's a trend that is occurring on that front loading. I've even worked in communities that have done that, and it's helped in retention, and that's the purpose of it.
Do you have any feedback of those who are on the back end? Does that affect their morale when increases come up and somebody gets a greater amount for the same period?
You know, in the organization I was with that did this, it wasn't a huge issue. They recognized that, and if they started with the organization for some time, they got the benefits up front as well, and so it wasn't a huge issue or controversial issue.
Okay. Other comments, Doug, Christine?
No, I did like it. The only thing that was kind of a surprise to me was the timing on it. It may be I actually don't. I was surprised, but I can see some wisdom in making this happen a little bit sooner, especially where it comes to the public safety part of it. Considering other things that are happening on January 1st, I think making an adjustment there to our officers now would probably help in our retention and hopefully forego some of the losses there. You had a lot of questions, Mayor. It may be worth taking maybe a half an hour after our business meeting to come back and maybe answer them and discuss them. We don't have the time right this second. That would be my suggestion, or possibly adding them to next week's special work session agenda.
Well, we could do that too. In summary, if I tried to put all that together in my brain, I'm overall supportive of the direction for January 1st, subject to working through these questions. And I think it'd be valuable to let employees know that come January 1st, or if the majority of the council would like to do it December 1st and 1st, I'm not going to fight if the majority want to feel that way. But I think at the very latest that January 1st, that we send out that message that we implement the compensation study, which includes the COLA and the merit, and they can count on that. It's just that subject to working through a couple of these questions. I'd love to get some feedback from Riley if there's concerns about where you've got fire that's doing it January 1st and then others are doing it before, because I think our fire is equally as important. And again, without question, Scott's reference to police, we don't want to lose officers. And so if we want to send a message to them that this is coming, then that's a good direction as well.
Mayor, may I just add? So we've looked at also other communities, and it's everywhere across the board. Some communities are implemented in July increases. Some waited till September with looking back toward going clear back to July. Some are waiting till January. The county just announced they're doing increases in January. They also did it last January, so I don't believe they've missed a budget cycle. We're a year and a half out, almost a year and a half from when we did our last increase. That's part of why I'm recommending to move this forward. We know that the budget projections show that there's budget to do so, and that's why the recommendations are where they're at. Council makes the decision on that. I recognize that, but that's what we found as we've looked at other communities as well.
So just to clarify the difference between the 2 months, we're talking about November and December. Is that correct? The difference between that and January? And the other police force is going to when are they going to start hiring? We know that.
I think in the spring is when they're going to start hiring, from what I've heard. Am I incorrect in that, Chief Russo?
I thought they started on January.
Yeah, they're going to make their appointment of their chief in the next couple of weeks, and then he'll start accumulating staff. I imagine next couple of months, he'll have advertisements out, not sooner than spring.
One thing too that I'd like to throw out there, and boy, I wish we had more time. In UFA, the UFA board, which is made up of all the mayors, created a standard that all UFA positions, when they look at studies like this, would be not in the top third, but in the top 3. And I encourage us to consider that for our police because it's so competitive. And I think in some of the council members' suggestions when we talked about our agenda for next week was to make sure that we have appropriate pay. So there's really some messaging here we need to get to them. That for me, one, at least the mayor, I support that our officers be in the top 3, which I think is a standard that has been set for fire and for that consistency. And that also would help hopefully in retention and in recruitment, that we recognize their value. But yeah, I don't like postponing unnecessarily, but this is a lot to digest with CARES Act, with budget impacts and the other requests. So what's the preference of the council?
Mayor, I'll just pipe in. I'm one of those people, I think, that wanted to look at increasing police pay and training. So I tend to agree with you. I feel like we're maybe pushing something a little bit faster than we should without having all the details. I feel like I just saw some information presented by Scott that I hadn't seen before. I don't think that was my packet. I feel like I need a packet for this to really be able to study it. And I don't have that. And I think we need to keep our session in October for what it was meant to be. And I would feel better about pushing off and talking about this in more detail in November. And we had used the January date, I thought, as a revisit date. We would revisit at that time and discuss. So that's my preference.
So Christine, when you say revisit January, are you looking at supporting implementation into January or waiting till January to discuss?
No, I'm saying we could have the discussion in November. I think when we have all of the details, I don't feel like, I felt like the summary was quite skinny for a magnitude of considerable amount in our budget. So I'm looking for more information. I'd like to hear from Chief Russo about what our police need. How is that going to affect our budget? If we need to add training, if we think we need to be the top 3 instead of the top, to your point, Mayor. I just feel like if we're going to do it, let's do it right the first time. And I would hate to shortchange people today because we want to get to it faster. I would prefer that we really take the time to get to the right answer. That's just my feeling.
Okay, yeah. Scott?
Mayor, I'm sorry.
Go
I'm sorry to chime in again. So we're going to have that discussion at our bonus meeting later this month about police. And there might be things that we want to invest in, like Christine was mentioning, additional training. I think I concur. We should not rush this. We should do it right.
So, yeah, tomorrow I'll be sending out a memorandum on the questions related to that meeting on October 27th. And one of the things that we're proposing is additional training opportunities for the police, which we'll talk about next week. But I think what I'm hearing, Mayor, is you need a better understanding of the study. I think all the things that all of you are bringing up, the study addresses, but you need to see more details so you can feel comfortable with that, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
right?
Not a lot. Again, I don't want to send a message that the study is necessarily incomplete or any criticisms of the study. I think the study is excellent. I think Scott's job's excellent. Tim, your job is excellent. I want our employees to know that we're committed to implement the results with a couple minor tweaks, maybe with a few more questions. And what I'm hearing, and somebody correct me, is that we're shooting for, subject to any unforeseen thing, having something effective January 1. This is just a lot of information to digest with a few questions. And then but I think we're on the right path. Scott, Doug?
Well, I guess as far as what the questions you asked about CARES funding and those, I mean, that's for me, I was looking at the 5-year projection, and that's very one-time funds are easy. You just adjust the last numbers up or down. And so that wasn't as large of an issue. But if you've already got 3 that are saying wait till January, then I can count as well as you
Well,
can.
but you can still give us your opinion. If you disagree, let us know. Yeah.
I was comfortable enough with it. I think that there's there. I think we can answer some of those questions. I think we could do it. I mean, honestly, I think if we took a half hour after the business meeting and or a little bit of time next week, we could probably get it done and still do it earlier. But if there's going to be more than that, or we need to have more detail, then, that is what it is.
I agree with that. I think if we find out sooner, get the information we need, so we don't feel like we're rushing any part of it on details, we could reevaluate that sooner than January.
I think another thing that we're not talking about, maybe as transparent as we need to be, is if we're talking about implementing a stormwater fee, I think we need to decide what that fee is going to be and the impact of that fee on our residents in addition to this. I don't think we're talking about, well, this means we don't have to implement any kind of a tax increase for 3 years, but what we're actually doing with the stormwater fee is implementing a tax increase. So I think it's important that we all understand that, yes, we believe that our employees are our greatest asset, but we also have to understand that we're going to be asking our citizens to be paying more with the implementation of a stormwater fee. And what is that? And how does that play back into the budget? And how does that affect what we're talking about here? And I don't think we've made that decision yet. So I don't know about your constituents, but I would like to have the full answer when I say, yes, we're going to give a merit increase in a COLA, plus we're going to implement a stormwater fee. And this is what it looks like in 2 years. We might need to raise taxes. I don't know how, I don't see, I've said it, I think in every meeting before, all these issues are interrelated. And if we don't think of them that way, then I think we're not giving the service we need to our residents.
But I don't want to take away the emphasis that we're talking about 60 days. And I know that's still a material amount to many, but what I'm hearing is a consensus to move forward on January 1. And between now and January 1, we'll get some of these answers that allow us to be more comfortable as a council, but also allows us to educate and communicate to our constituents the rationale behind our direction. Okay. Any further comments before we move to next item on our agenda? So when do we want to have this back?
That was my question. When do we want to meet? Do we want to set up a time to meet to?
Well, do you want to take a minute at our special session, or do we want to just wait until 1st November and get it done?
The November 3rd, the November 3rd work session, we could move our committee boards.
Busy.
We could move our committee boards and reports and have more time for this.
Yeah.
So I think we could do that.
Yep.
We have the Bengal Boulevard roundabout design discussion, and then we could have this on there if that's what the council wants to do.
Well, yeah, I guess I would say there's a lot of this that is going to tie into next week's discussion as well. I expect some of it will come up, and so that's why I suggested maybe taking 15 or 20 minutes with some of the updates for some of the questions that were asked tonight to do that, because it'll probably play into some of those others.
I think it'll probably happen automatically. So I think we maybe want to look at both meetings. It's going to come up next week, but then I would ask him to include it on the agenda too, based upon where we are after next week and a couple other minor questions. Yeah.
We could get those graphs pretty much immediately, couldn't we, Tim, as far as the graphs that you had on screen?
Yeah.
I'd ask for a couple more clarifications on those graphs too. Yeah. But
and I'd also ask I'd also look to the three, I think Tally's always asking for this, but what are the three most similar cities to us and how do we rate compared to them in terms of the market analysis? How are we doing compared to those who are most like us? I'd like to see.
Yeah. So we did that to 16 of the cities that are in our market area.
I'd like to see three. Just show me three. Where are they at? Where are we at? Just a simple chart. Nothing extensive. Just very high levels.
Okay.
All right. In summary, just real quickly, we have a. If you look at your calendar, what I did with my calendar, we have Bengal Boulevard Open House, which is actually the roundabout, if I understand correctly, on
yes,
November 12th. We have a meeting next Tuesday at 5 p.m. where we'll be taught. We have an agenda that Tim will be sending out. I shouldn't say an agenda. You'll get an agenda, but also you'll get an email that'll outline the topics of discussion and some suggestions and some responses to facilitate to use your time wisely. Then we will talk a little bit about this subject in that meeting appropriately as we move through it. Also, we'll include this topic on our November agenda with the intent is to look at implementing the market study, the salary and COLA January 1 based upon the outcome of those discussions.
When are we going to finalize the stormwater decision?
Well, you gave us direction with the $7.50 to move forward with some public input meetings. We're working on marketing materials related to that for the public input meetings. We're going to be doing those in the upcoming couple of months. But we are moving into the December month as well, so it may spill over into January. But that's what we're working towards right now based on the direction you gave us 2 weeks ago.
And that stormwater fee to me is just like truth in taxation. I was not there when you recommended the $7.50, but the council has come up with the $7.50 amount. That's like years ago when we came up with a tax amount. Then based upon public comment, you can go forward with that amount, or you can adjust it based upon public comment. All right. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn our work session, and can I make the same motion, Paul, and then reconvene our CDRA meeting in 5 minutes because it'll take her that long to get started up on the new one.
All right, let me go quickly. Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second? Tally second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned.